G'day, folks. Talk to Matthew Elliott, previous professional rugby league player, and really made his mark as a coach with the Canberra Raiders, Penrith Panthers, New Zealand Warriors, and he bloody won a premiership over in England with the Bradford Bulls. And we explore his philosophies within the Changeroom, his programs, looking at all the different facets of life, whether it's individuals that are incarcerated, employment, sports, you name it, looking at the food that you're putting in to yourself in your body, regenerative farming, the power of movement, really pushing mindset of how you can be an effective leader for yourself, but also for the community, your team. High tide raises all canoes, people. And as he put it, finding solutions to reduce the cost of suffering. Solid words by the man, and I look forward to seeing how the Changeroom develops and grows with some of his business partners, with Anthony Minicello, Mini, played for the Roosters, and others that he's involved with. It's on the trajectory, on the way up. Solid work, brother. Love it. And if you like the podcast, hit that subscribe or follow button. And we've also got a Patreon page. The link is within the description. So if you want to roll with the squad and become a patron, that'd be great. And want to thank our sponsors. Permobil Australia, the greatest electric wheelchairs in the land. Wouldn't be sitting in anything else but these four wheels right here. And they got great assistive tech also. So righto, let's get into it. Matt Elliott, brother, appreciate you coming up here on the Central Coast and just willing to sit down and just yarn about. There's a lot of stages and things that I want to flesh out with you, but in and around the coaching, you know, a lot of the mindset stuff that you're getting into these days, and now bloody podcasting and all the media stuff. And mate, it doesn't stop. You know, all things rugby league. So welcome.
Yeah, the good thing about, well, thanks for having me, Jake. That's the first thing I want to say. But the great thing about sport is it's not limited to sport. You start to learn that if something works for an athlete, it's most likely going to work for for a person. And the good thing about high performance sport in particular is you get to see what's happening at the cutting edge, and you learn what does work and doesn't. That's for sure.
So where did you learn where it does work, right? Because you're born up in Thursday Island, so a lot of mob up there. So when you're looking up, right up the north tip of Queensland, so did you learn your journey on the island itself or mainly on the mainland, or how did it all start out, mate? It's
funny, Jake, the people ask me that question. I left there when I was 3.
Right.
And then fundamentally grew up in Townsville. And but I think the thing that it gave me was immediately, because my first carer was a local woman. And I was so fortunate that my parents embraced all cultures. They didn't talk about it, they just embraced all cultures. And I never really understood as a young person the differentiation. So when the footy team I played for as a kid, I was the only white fella in the black line.
Yeah, right.
It was a black line. So, and I can say that because that's what it was. But there's real strength in that, and I guess there was a weakness in it because when I saw behaviour that didn't align to that, I was really confused. I didn't know, why would you actually do that? So it was a blessing, definitely a blessing, but also it's made me get a little bit defensive around that sort of stuff, as time goes on.
That's good, mate. We need those voices, especially, when you got a lot of strong white fellas that are, popping up for, doesn't matter if you're black, white or brindle, and that's really important. And I've always had that struggle my whole life. Like, I'm proud Indigenous fella, like I'm Wanneroo Kamilaroi, but I've always grown up, but I'm fair skinned, obviously. So, my mother is dark and father's fair skinned, but just growing up and, when people are talking and carrying on about, and not just black fellas, but, about all sorts of cultures. And plus I grew up, like me being in a wheelchair now, 15 years in, but my youngest brother's, he's on the spectrum too. So it's always been like growing up and sticking up for, doesn't matter what the situation is with the individual. And it just frustrates me, growing up with that stuff and still seeing it today, and it's always going to be ongoing, but we need to continuously educate people. Yes, it gets tiring at times, but you just got to keep up the fight, brother, and I'm glad you're in the race with this too.
So I don't see it as a fight now, Jake, because can I give you an example of what we did today? So,
mate, throw it in there.
We were doing some work with some people that are injured workers, predominantly psychologically injured, but also physically injured people there. And one of our mentors today is Jeff Hardy, a proud Indigenous man. And part of the story that Jeff shares, and I'm a real science geek, right? So we're there to get people better. So it's not that he's one of my best mates. He's there to help people get better. The interesting thing is a lot of the stuff that these knowledge holders from 60,000 years ago, the stuff that they were doing, 50, 60,000 years ago is what's healing people now. And there's science behind it.
100%.
And, I can give you 1,000 examples of, some of the wisdom that Jeff shares with people, and that it shits me because they always go, how amazing is him? I go, oh, did you hear me talk? But no, he's someone you need to, if you want to get some real understanding of the power of, First Nations people to heal everyone. It doesn't delineate between your skin colour.
No.
The stuff that Jeff shares heals everyone, and it's just, timeless knowledge about, we talk about human connection, right, and the importance of it. It's the biggest cause of longevity on the planet.
Yeah, that's for
and
sure.
And loneliness, they have a minister for loneliness in the UK now. Because one of the biggest causes of mental health is
isolation. Are you serious?
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Is isolation. And we obviously came through a period of time where isolation happened a lot, and then where people scoff about yarning circles. Well, the health of that is amazing. It's just there's so many different stories that these knowledge holders can share. So, yeah, I'm grateful that I have an understanding of it, and I'm grateful that I can share the science behind it, and it's I don't think it works. I don't believe it works. I know it works because we've seen it. We've had tens of thousands of people come through our program, and I've seen it work in front of my eyes. I've seen people's lives be impacted by it.
That's awesome. Yeah, so you've got Mr. Hardy there, and you got that First Nations knowledge and, the healing powers, and that doesn't matter if it's, the physical components or, a lot of the mental game that can come through it there. So, and it'd be interesting to flesh that out. So, and mate, I'd be willing to get the wheels burning and come along and to witness that, because, and that's the thing, because he might have his own take on it. And I know a lot of mobbing there got, because, we're all Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander, or where you were born, you got the Thursday Islanders up there, and you've got all your different nations. You got the continent, but you got all your different nations within a nation.
Yeah.
Like there's hundreds of different groups across the continent and ways of healing. And collectively, like it's good what I can see, and I'm looking forward to that, and I'll take you on that too. And you've seen it, you feel it, and mate, and it's good to see all the different, whether you're up in the NT or WA or Nunga down in South Oz or Corey's in New South Wales, and just the healing powers collectively of, where that can, mentally bring a person, whether they're too high or they're too low, and it can sort of bring situations to an even keel and give perspective.
Yeah, and you know what? This amazing planet we live on, you don't care what colour you are. It's like Jeffro showed a great picture that he took in Coffs Harbour of, the rock beaches in Coffs Harbour, all the little pebbles on the beach.
Right.
All different colours. Now, this is some of the wisdom that he shares. The water don't care. It don't care. They're all moving together. They're all moving, based on the needs of the planet. And so we don't look at the differences. We look at the things that, when we merge science with these knowledge holders and this is something that we can do for everyone. You know, we all need to have pride in where we came from, but it's what we do now with the knowledge that we've had shared with us, particularly in modern life. You know, there's more opportunity to get ill in modern life than ever. The food we eat, sedentary lifestyle, the distractions we have, but equally, there's more opportunity to live longer than ever.
That's right.
Through the amazing processes that we have access to. So who chooses that?
Yeah. And I'm big on that too, mate. Like, you know, and what we're seeing more and more of today, like, you know, what you're putting in as in the food that you eat. And, you know, when it's got to do with the gut biome, and people are really starting to realise that it's not just, you know, the brain of, you know, when it's got to do with how neurons work and how the body can move and think and everything else, but it's like what the gut can dictate what it does to the rest of the body. Like, you know, a good example is, like, this is for myself and what I know. So I got put on a study, this is back in 2012, where it was probiotics, you know, for quadriplegics in general, because the way that it works with quadriplegia, you know, usually with, you know, health and immune systems, it doesn't work as good as, say, as an able-bodied person. And it was through the different hospitals, through the different universities. And then I found out that through that control test, I was not on the placebo, taking the real stuff, and I just kept it up. And I've been taking them religiously since 2012, because I get really conscious of what I eat anyway. But before I was in a chair, I was pretty active, you know, chippy builder, travelling from the coast of Sydney every day, working out, up, gym, all that sort of stuff. And always been conscious, you know, love a beer in there and a whiskey or whatever on the weekend here and there, but just balance that out too. But anyway, just keeping that up. And since I've been taking probiotics, yeah, I've had COVID twice, common flu. This is sleeping next to my wife. She's flued up, you know, working in offices with aircon, like they're all flued up, all my colleagues around me. I have not had the common flu since 2012. COVID, yes, but no common flu. And I strongly believe in the probiotics and the gut biome.
Well, you're poking the bear, Jake. You got to be careful, because that same year, 2012, I had an autoimmune disease called PMR. And I was lucky that I got the sack from Penrith in 2011, and I was at the Roosters for a year, and I met Anthony Minicello. Now, Anthony Minicello introduced me to a way of eating called Weston A. Price, who was a dentist from the late 1800s, early 1900s, who travelled around the world and looked at people's dental hygiene. I won't go into it too much, but and Anthony shared with me in 2012 what I'm seeing human biologists now, you know, preaching to the world. Anthony Minicello should be on the stage talking to everyone. He's one of our mentors as well. But he was the first person I got. I was injecting myself twice a day with a steroid, taking sleeping tablets, taking painkillers. Didn't tell anyone, because that's what white Australian males do. We don't tell anyone. That's a really good idea, right? Yeah, don't take that advice. But, you know, so what you're saying is entirely true. You know, one of our most potent medicines that you can take is what you eat. And it's now proven,
Big
for example,
time.
it's now proven that one of the biggest impacts on your mood, your emotional state, biggest cause of death and disease on the planet is stress, how you feel. You don't think stress, you feel it, right? So one of the biggest impactors on it, not the only impactor, but one of the is what you eat. You know, and they've done research across correctional facilities in the US where they took them from prison food to whole food, and, you know, the use of force by prisoners' officers went down 75%. Violent behaviour amongst prisoners went down 91%. Self-harm down by 100%.
What?
Yeah. You know, so this is, again, something I'm really passionate about, you know, and it's all there.
People don't talk about this enough.
Yeah, well, that, again, you could be a cynic about it, because there's a fair bit of
But you're right.
industry and people being unwell.
That's it, 100%. So, you know, and when you got big pharma and all these other industries in the mix, when it's all this stuff that's cooked up in a lab, and obviously the price components that come with it, and to leave people on this stuff, like when you're talking about opioids or this or that, there's all sorts of garbage that people can balance out or maybe look down an alternative path. And it's not to go, this is woo-woo stuff up in the air. It's stuff that, like you said, that you're putting in your mouth that can make a difference instead of, and then you don't end up with these certain diseases or whatever it may be, and where you're taking copious amounts of pills or, because, and the clinicians don't always have like that thorough understanding and of, if it's got to do with certain foods or certain other ailments or other paths that you want to go down, Because I know someone that we just talked about off air and we had to do with a quadriplegic like Barney Miller, because I know that guy leads a certain lifestyle, and I know he's been knocked about and that with certain other ailments, and that's just a part of quadriplegia and some things that you can't help. But for the most part, like I say, this bloke that's wheeling about and getting after life and, surfing, doing this and that and everything, and despite being in a wheelchair and having a crack.
Yeah. Again, my balance to it is that when I did have my autoimmune disease, and I still have it, I can bring it back, I just haven't had any of the symptoms of it for 12 years, the pharmaceuticals that I got, I needed. It gave me space to have some sanity. If I didn't have it, I don't know what would have happened, because the pain that it, as a symptom wasn't good. But I wasn't going to solve the problem. No. I just got some space to get some clear head and get that pain mitigated. And then I was able to, luckily, I met Anthony, and within 6 weeks I was off all medication.
6 weeks?
6 weeks.
Please talk us through it.
Yeah, well, it was the Weston A. Price diet. Again, he was a dentist, and he literally travelled all around the world. Where I mean all around the world, he went everywhere. And he looked at people's dental hygiene. And obviously your dental hygiene and your jaw is a really good indication of your health, isn't it? So, and he was a bit of a woo-woo guy, and he was hoping it'd all be vegetarian and vegan, but he found out that it was, basically whole foods and the right mixture of proteins and good fats and all that. And just so, the ketogenic diet and all these other diet, paleo, was sort of all started with Weston A. Price, this dentist, and it was pretty.
Hold on, that was started in and around with this fella involved, yeah?
No, not involved, but it was the research that he did out of it.
Oh, right, okay.
It was really interesting, when you looked at people's jawlines, and then when Western diet came in, not Weston A. Price diet, but Western diet came in, to places like the Pacific and how much it detrimentally impacted people, and the amount of obesity that all of a sudden started showing up in their communities because of access to refined sugars and things like that. So
sugar's no good, man.
Yeah. Well, it's not, because it's not a food. You've got to understand that the sugar that we see that we put in our teas and coffee, that's a substance, it's not a food. And, it's something that's obviously causing major issues right around the planet.
Mate, so, and there's a lot that can be education. That's what we need more of from all different types of angles. And you can see it starting to come through mainstream media now when you're looking at the streaming platforms like where you got your Netflixes of the world and this and that, and where they're really starting to focus on the gut biome, where they're really starting to focus on sugar, and not just where it just makes, where it does stack the weight on and does X, Y, and Z to the body and slow you down, but where it slows you down upstairs too, and where it can really affect you upstairs in your mood, and where they're saying, when they're starting to cut certain things out and eating a certain way, it's not just stripping weight off, it's, if it's bringing some sort of mental clarity or cognitively, you can be more effective if you're starting to push away the cheeseburgers and all the rest of the carry-on and refined sugars, and where you can really start focusing on. And first it's starting off with what you're putting in, but if you can and you can manage, it's trying to put, despite your capacity, whether you're an able-bodied or disability, it's trying to throw the exercise in the mix too, which is important.
Yeah, and that industry is a massive industry, obviously. And look, I've also got to be, it's a little bit like the balance I brought to the pharmaceutical side of things. I've got a daughter who's a type 1 diabetic. And sometimes if she has she has a hypo, and I've tried with honey is effective, but it's not as effective as sugar, just getting sugar straight into it, whether it be a snake or whatever. So, look, as I say, it's done a lot of damage, but there's also, we got to balance the conversation up a touch.
Yeah, that there is a balance. Like when you do that type 1 too, and obviously you got, and where people have got to continuously, eat and watch that. And it's good that you got the tech involved with type 1 now, how they wear the patches and can check on the app and just see where the levels are. And you've got normal standard levels of BSLs, but everybody's got their own different baseline too. Because we've had clients and, where they've gone to the hospital and where some of the nurses have gone, well, their BSLs are so, and I'm like, no, that's, or their wife or whoever's involved, and we've gone, no, that's their normal level. But we just got to work within our means and just try and balance that out. So, but yeah, it is hard with type 1 diabetes
But there's not a lot of balance at the moment, Jake. Let's be honest about that. The balance is way off at the moment with the consumption of sugars, refined sugars in particular.
And the industry. And you're seeing that where it's, and also the education. And that's why I love podcasts as well. And, where I've learned a ton, and then you've got YouTube and all the rest of it. And, you've got to see, what's logic and what sings true. And what you're seeing more of, and where you're seeing it etch away at society, but where people are physically doing it and where they're feeling it and eating the right way and just trying to live that healthy lifestyle. But the thing that really gives me the shits is that when you hear of these industries and where you're hearing some of the, whether it's in the past or it's still continuous now, when you're looking at the R&D, like the research and development, and where you're seeing these big industries like of sugar, but they're paying the scientists, and where do you
I do.
And then where do you think their bias is going to go when you're looking at what's on the paper and what's going to get read out?
You don't need to think about it, Jake.
Yeah, it's bullshit anyway.
You know the answer. And look, there is a lot more understanding of this. So people, there was probably 10, 15 years ago a really good way of hiding that or refuting a lot of the science. You can't now. No. So there's momentum going in the opposite direction. There'll be resistance to that. And what they do is they're very clever. Like, come on, I've got a sweet tooth. I'm not being judgmental of people that enjoy sugar stuff because I can't afford to, because I'm in the same boat. However, the access to it, particularly for kids, the access to it in everything, it's in everything, that and soy and, vegetable oils.
That's a bad one.
Well, there's no good ones in what I just mentioned.
Palm oil?
All of it. And, it's the creation of inflammation and disease and everything around that it's really sad, because it's not as though the companies that are doing this don't know it. So I always say to people who want to talk about throw your vegetable oils out, I always say, when was the last canola oil ad you saw on TV? When was the last margarine ad you saw on TV? Why aren't they advertising it?
Yeah, right.
And that's normally the answer I get. Think about it.
Made me go silent there.
Yeah. Why aren't they doing it? Why don't you see white sugar ads on TV anymore? Or why don't the really healthy one, the brown sugar, why don't you see that on TV anymore?
The healthy one, the brown sugar. It's true though.
Interesting, isn't it? Why is that stopped? They know.
Yeah.
They know they can't afford to push it, but they also know that we're all so addicted to it that, and you don't know. I always say to people, look, if you look at the ingredients on anything you buy, all right, If you don't recognise it, your body won't recognise it. And that's the biggest cause of, one of the things of retention of weight is what they call toxic load rather than fats and sugars. Whatever your body doesn't recognise, it stores as toxic load in your body as far away from your vital organs as possible, which tends to be, down here. So, yeah, there's a simple way of, navigating through this.
Yeah, and when you're in the supermarket, navigating that, stay away from all the holes in the middle, staying on the outsides where all the whole foods are,
Yeah, that's what I always say. How many ingredients in an apple? How many ingredients in a steak? The more whole food that you eat, the better. Again, for Anthony Minicello, who's one of our mentors and just a genius in this area, you also got to know where your food came from, because I would have thought that fish is salmon be really healthy for you, but salmon eat pellets of grain, so an unhealthy animal is not going to give you health. And it's the same with cattle. Cattle eat grass, so unhealthy. If they're not eating grass, they're not healthy, are they?
That's it. And that's what blows me away when you see that some of these cattle station feeding lots and, there's no grass in sight. What they're standing on, it's all red dirt, and it's just pellets and crap and corn and just not the greatest stuff. And, it's what's going in, coming out, and where they talk about it, where it does feed throughout the sinew and the fat and the actual animal itself.
Yeah, it's omega-6, omega-3 imbalance that happens in that. And you know what? It's Anthony's saying is, we have got that, you are what you eat. Anthony goes one further and step in front of that, you are what your food eats. So you are what your fruit and veggies eat. We use nutrient-dense soil. That's why supplements are so important, because our fruit and veggies aren't drawing those minerals and vitamins out of the soil. And obviously there's glyphosate then.
That's the one thing I do worry about, when it's got to do with fruit and veggies, and obviously when it's got to do with, Woolies, Coles, and just, it's an extra layer. You're going to grab the gear and wash it, but then it's, where did it come from? And it's just trying to navigate that as well. And not everybody has ease of access to, if they're going to, I don't know, if it's a Harris Farms or some other
local markets.
Yeah, that's it. And sort of knowing, if you really want to go to the science of that, and not just going to the markets, but where did they get it from, or knowing where the farms are and knowing what they're spraying the gear with, or just if it's all natural, going that next extra level. And not everybody has either access to that, whether if it's getting to the places or financially, and that's the other crippling effect that people have there, especially in this climate.
Yeah, I don't want to be – I sometimes come across as positive Pete in this, so I don't want to be over-optimistic in all this, but people are starting to understand this, particularly farmers. So for farmers to do what they call regenerative farming, they call it now, which is old-style farming, where you move your crops around like you used to, and your cows and all your livestock walk across and break the soil for you, and they shit on it for you, and that's
shift it around.
That's called regenerative farming, which is old school farming. That's becoming more prominent, and the good thing for that is that the yield for farmers who do that is going up.
True. Better access, or I should say more access, more yield, more access.
Yeah, which is a positive thing. That before that, you can imagine, because farmers are good communities. They're together, and all of a sudden you're doing this new weird type of farming. What are you doing, dude? Let's do it how we do it. So that paradigm's been broken, and they're starting to get a lot more, particularly globally as well. So let's cross our fingers that our next generations, because it's don't get me started too much on this, but we talk about carbon emissions, and we're talking about cars and apparently cows farting, but the biggest impact,
or the methane in the cow farts,
the biggest impact on carbon in our planet is soil. But we turn soil into dirt. So instead of absorbing carbon, like we are, that's what we do when we breathe, right?
Yeah.
So
And the trees.
the highest concentration of life on the planet and the universe is rich soil. You've ever picked, you pick it up and you see it in your hand, and there's stuff crawling around and everything. It's what you can't see as well. Well, that absorbs carbon. It's the biggest absorber of carbon on the planet. But when it turns to dirt, that heat that's coming down gets reflected back up, and that's the thing that hopefully with this regenerative farming we start turning it around, because you can turn dirt back to soil.
Are you saying, like, so are we, like, where we're seeing more of this, right? And you're saying there's higher yield, but are we seeing, are there advocacy groups? Is the government getting involved? Are people getting suppressed? Like, what's the go? Like, are they getting help? Because...
Well, no, my understanding of it, so you got to understand, I'm not in the industry, I'm just observing it. And
Just as an observer, yeah.
They're not getting as encouraged as much as I think they should. But there are people that, like, you can't refute.
Is it because they're worrying about dollars and cents most of the time, and then that gets in the way? Or
it's like all of us, Jake, when we've done something for our whole lives a certain way. Like I watched a show on the ABC recently about a farmer in it was in Western Australia, about having livestock, walking across, and then he had on the hills, he had donkeys up there. Now you got to cull donkeys.
I saw that.
Yeah. So, but the whole idea was that the donkeys were, helping the soil and the regeneration of those hillsides,
and it stopped the wildfires and all that going on, eh?
Yeah. So, and again, I get that. I get the resistance to donkeys because they're not natural inhabitants. But to be fair, nor are we. And it's just a matter of getting the balance right. But but all of a sudden, you can obviously imagine there was huge resistance to what that person was doing. But now they're going, oh, actually, that's right, and the science is validating it, because that's the modern language of engagement, science. You can say, well, we've been doing this for tens of... People don't care about that. You've got to have the scientific research to validate it, and it has now. Same with the regenerative farming. They also, not only do they know the quality of food's better, the nutrient density of the food's better for you. You don't have to eat as much because you're not hungry, because the quality of what you're taking in doesn't have you craving for more stuff. But it's also helping the environment, and it's also helping the farmer.
Yeah, true. So, and... because that come into thought too. So when I've had the opportunity to drive up into the NT and go to all these remote communities and get out and about, and what was rife throughout communities, because it's got to do with lack of access, right? When it's got to do with food. So you got a lot of mob out there, where people can, go hunting and take care of business and sort stuff out, but then where some people don't, but then the only access of food that they've got, where it's like just like one local shop within the one community, they're not, because they're either walking, and not everybody has the luxury to have cars, right? So, and then all the cheap stuff, it's all the sugar and crap. And, if you've want to punt on the grapes or something like that, it's like $15 more, depending on which region it is, because then you've got the logistics on top, which is a shame. Like, you're getting mobs that are getting involved now where they're starting to grow a lot of stuff and that's great, but not everyone. So then when they're going to, because they can only afford it, and sugar doesn't really agree with, because the biological structure of certain cultures are different to others, and sugar's not great for blackfellas. Mate, the amount of limbs that I've seen that were lobbed off people, I was blown away. And just the messages that they're trying to spread to communities, like this is mob to mob, or the general government or practitioners or whatever, just to, try and stay off sugar. And that's great, but when you can only, if there's nothing to sort of hunt within area or season, and all you can do is afford sugar, then, what's the systems that you're going to put in place?
You really need to get Jeff Hardy on and have a chat to him about it. And the reason being, and again, so I'm sharing story here. This is not my understanding of it, but they're culling things like roos, right? So what are you doing with the roos that you cull?
See, that stuff drives me nuts.
So why wouldn't you utilise that? Because it's obviously high quality meat.
It is. It's the same. It's with the roos. It's with deer. Like, they just want to knock them off. But it's like, okay, what you're talking about? People that are either that need healthy food, people that are homeless, people, all types of people that need essential food, or where you can educate people. But I know there's rules around, food, how you process it, certain butchers, and if you got to take it, because I've looked into it a bit, like if you go and knock off a certain deer, or even if you got your own cattle, and then you got to bring in a mobile butcher, because there's a certain process that has to be involved. But how do we then look at the people that are suffering, and then how do we bring in some balance to that?
Well, let's just play pretendies, right? So what I do know is that and you're right, and because the genetic evolution of Indigenous culture to sugars, you've only been exposed to it for 250 years. So it's like alcohol, right? It's new to you. So what I do know is that the amount of dialysis machines in those outback areas is like proportionally massive, right? So what if you could just, instead of spending all your money on that, you started doing what you talked about and providing access to that food that we know is there? Do you think that'll be a saving? Do you think that'd elevate the health? Do you think the amount of people that would need that would reduce?
Mate,
I'm not sure. I'm just asking the question, but, it would make sense to me that if you've got that access, and there's definitely problems related to sugar. That's not the thing that I'm talking about. Dialysis machines alone is not from me. I know their stats, and they're massive costs.
Yeah, it's not good. And that's the thing that, does get frustrating when you're seeing mob communities going through this, and how much it costs for these machines to, because you might be going, say, from this thing getting shipped out from just say Alice, and then, or if you got say Broome, and then it's a community that's 4 hours out, or wherever it is, and you can't always, like, mob or people aren't, it doesn't matter if you're black, white or Brindle, you got people that are in rural New South Wales that need situations like this when it's dialysis machines, and you got to either get them to move, or where they're pretty much tied into a bloody hospital 3 days a week, 4 days, whatever the requirement is for their dialysis, or if it is moving that machine, but the cost that comes with that, moving it, maintaining it, and then having the people out, the clinicians to come in, and that continuous cost when you could have X amount of food, or when you got the preventatives instead of some shit cure that isn't necessarily going to work, or it might work for some part of their life, but not for all of it. And government, I think sometimes, state and territory governments sometimes get, don't want to put some of these things in place. It's until things get dire or shit, and then it's like, okay, now the abundance amount of people are now screaming up, now we have to do something, but maybe there's better ways of doing it.
Yeah, and I get the caution around it, Jake, I do. But I do believe that with the right amount of support in a cheaper way than what they're having to do, just from, for the implications and the ramifications of, the amount of sugar and alcohol being consumed. If you could, let's just play pretendies again, and you could get those beasts that are being culled, to be butchered in a safe way that provides good food. Do you reckon that would reduce the medical costs?
You'd think so, wouldn't you?
I do.
Imagine, imagine if you had all the amount of feral animals that, like, even though you got a lot of the pigs and the stuff out, and if you just go north of here up the Hunter Valley, the amount of pigs that are out there, and I know there's you know,
Are you making a Donald Trump suggestion here and telling like we should go and eat, cats and dogs or something, mate?
no, we're not going that far. No, but like the amount
you're going to be next Prime Minister of Australia now.
No, none of that, champ. Settle down. Right. No, but the thing is, mate, like the amount of ferals, look, and I hate feral animals because I've got a love for the Australian flora and fauna around here and just how destructive they can be that. But you're looking at the plenty of good meat that can come off wild pigs, wild boar. But, thousands, like, you've seen these hunters just up here, the Hunter Valley, the Upper Hunter, where I know there's a bloke that's got a bloody YouTube channel and it's massive, and he's just up the Hunter there knocking off all these hundreds of pigs in a night, and they're just laid to rot. When you got all this meat where you could take the good parts of it and where it would be like good lean parts of it, because these animals are running. They're not eating crap. They're not getting fat, and they're eating natural nutrients. Yeah, they're ferals and that's the reason why they're getting killed off. But there could be a lot better use, and it would be cheaper. It's like just let's peel away a bit of the red tape, see how it works.
Well, there's a lot of people that are struggling, isn't there? There's a lot of people that don't have access. I'm lucky. I can go to my markets. I've got an income that allows me to eat in a way that I can choose to be healthy. I can choose other ways of eating, but I can choose. Some people don't have that choice.
That's right.
And it'd be nice to be able to get them high quality food in a way that from sources that you're talking about there.
And how's it changed you personally? Like, not just like you're talking about the physicality of just when you're looking at that disease and where it's sort of suppressed it, or, and how it sort of hit you sideways and how it's leveling down inflammation and all that stuff. But how did it just affect you cognitively and just you being able to function from day to day?
The simplistic way of saying it, Jake, is that if you're in pain and you're taking medications, you're not living from a place of clarity. If you're not living from a place of clarity, are you making great decisions all the time? So again, there's a whole lot of things that are impacted by that. Are you feeling, is your emotional state in a state that makes you want to be someone that people want to hang around? There's impacts of all of that stuff. It's not just one thing. So there's no way of avoiding it what I learned, again, the combination of, it's not even modern medicine anymore, because medicine 3.0 is about to come in. We're in medicine 2.0. Medicine 3.0 is you don't go to the doctor when you're sick. You go to the doctor now, and they can tell you what's going to kill you at 104, and they start treating it for you when you're 40. That's not Matt Elliott's theory. They already know this stuff. They know they can get your DNA, and all of the way that you methylate and the methylation process that happens within your body and how you digest food is different. We're all different, okay? So all that stuff's available. It's not like, this is starting to unfold. It's unfolded. It's available. But again, if you were a cynic, you'd go, well, there's a lot of money in people being sick though, Matt, isn't there? And you go, it kind of makes sense.
A lot of money that people got to fork out, but sadly, where the money's going and that machine, when you're talking about, you'd call it like, it's almost like the medical industrial complex, And what blew me away, and this is just looking into the States, like, I feel pretty fortunate that we're in this pocket of the earth and in Australia, and we've got a public system that does help a lot of individuals out there, right? But when you're looking at some of the situations in the States and the private entity behind that, like you're looking at some of these hospitals, but how you've got some of the hospitals where percentages of that hospitals are owned by some of the doctors that are working in the hospitals. So there's a lot of sort of, it's almost like keeping people sick or keeping them through the door because you got this, because it's funny how money can sway individuals in a negative fashion. There's a lot of people that positively, like when it goes in their back pocket and they're going to help the masses, but I think it sort of can sway a lot of people into a negative light, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, and I can't be judgmental about that because, I quite like having money too because it gives me the opportunity to do things. So, and I'm not being defensive on behalf of doctors because I don't, like you, believe everything that they say, but I went to university and I had a professor stand at the front of the room when I was a young person, tell me about how I need to eat and what a high-performance exercise looks like. Did I believe it? I totally believed it, right? So, it's some of it we need to look at, and I'm inquisitive enough to go and now prepared to be vulnerable enough to go, you know what, I was wrong. I was actually wrong and I got that wrong, and that's how we evolve. You got to be able to admit that to evolve, right? And I hear people talk about doctors like that, but you got to understand that they're doing it because they believe that what they're doing is helping you because they care about you. They want to make a difference. It's just sometimes breaking down the paradigm that can you actually explore that there might be a better way of doing this, and that amazing understanding and knowledge that you have of of human beings could be actually just slightly evolved a bit to make things better for people.
Mate, yeah. And that's the thing, like everybody's biology and your metrics, like everybody's different. So, and, it's really making sure that the doctors, and I've been to a ton and seen, and just talking to individuals, and everybody's different, and it's making sure that they know that. Because I've gone to places where I've gone to second opinions or third, and I've gone, mate, like, why didn't I come here 10 years ago? So it's just always, question everything when it's got to do with, your physical health, and what's really important, what you can't see.
Yeah.
When it's got to do with your mental health, that's not always visible to someone. I can wheel into a room and they're like, yeah, he's obviously got a physical disability, but it's not always looking at, someone that's in a chair or, an able-bodied, you uprights, like how you are functionally.
Did you just call
mentally.
me up myself then?
No, mate,
Right.
you're right.
I'm being defensive. I'm being defensive.
Yeah. I'll tell you what I really think of it. Nah, mate, yeah, it's all good. No, but you know what I mean? That's what people don't understand. It's like, because like I told you before, like my wife and I run a NDI service provision company, and the more that, and we work in and around a lot of high complex disabilities, but that's high complex, intellectual, cognitive, psychosocial. And when, we're dealing with, and it drives me nuts, the amount of people that are incarcerated to that, because we deal with individuals that are coming out of, transitioning out of incarceration facilities. And
Well done.
yeah, and we're just having a crack, and it gives me the shits too, because you got some people that don't want to go there because they're like, it's too hard basket, right? And I'm like, and you might have, intellectual disabilities, cognitive or psychosocial, drug use on top, you name it. But everybody deserves a crack at life despite their disability or their ability, right? And the frustrating thing is, and I explain this to whether we're dealing with stakeholders, like whether it's people from the state or territory governments or clinicians, or if it's the individuals themselves. It's like we sit down and say, they're just looking at you, who you are. Like, because you're acting this way, they don't understand the magnitude of when it's got to do, because of the stigma and everything still around mental health, and they're not seeing that side of that disability or what you're saying. What you're saying makes sense to you, but to the outside world, people don't understand it. And we understand it because it's got to do with your disability and working with clinicians and things are worked out. But that's why there needs to be more education out there when it's got to do with the mental aspect of it, because whether it's got to do with people that are autistic, intellectual disabilities or whatever it may be, there's a lot of individuals that are walking through life, and whether the general community don't understand, or clinicians, or within the individuals themselves, of how come you're thinking this way about me or saying this about me, and they need to continuously explain themselves, you know. It's we just got to keep fighting the fight, mate. So
yeah, well, you're doing a great job with that, and you know, it's something that I've obviously got a great deal of intrigue with, and it's something that I work with as well. Yeah, we work with a lot of people with what they call psych injuries, and obviously the new legislation around psychosocial safety has certainly had a big impact on that, drawn a lot more attention to it. There's a balance again. I'm into that word balance, about while there's a lack of external understanding and awareness about people's condition, you know, a lot of the individuals I've worked with who are suffering with these things, it's their lack of self-awareness that's also elevating the problem, that they're so focused on outside them and what other people are thinking of them, and you know what they can't do, but they don't have the awareness of, you know, why am I feeling this way, and what can I do about this? That's part of the balance. And I think the other thing, that because we're really good as a species in conforming to environments.
Yeah, we think we are far out.
Yeah, we can get better at it. There's no doubt about it. But when you get humans and there's not, you have to conform, but there's some environments, like if someone came in here and started yelling at us, well, that's not what we want in this place. No. So people tend to go, okay, well, I need to have a chat to Jake and Matt, but I'm going to come in. There's also the way of, what do I need to do with the challenge that I've got to adapt to the environment. That doesn't mean you don't talk up. It definitely means you talk up, but you also need to do a little bit of adaptation.
You took the words out of my mouth. Adapt. Yeah. Because people are too reactionary, you know, before really feeling the environment. And, you know, and I know I can be guilty of it too. Is like sometimes something hits you and it's acting in a certain way, but then you sort of learn from that. But, mate, I'm continuously trying to have that inner dialogue with myself of how to react in certain ways when the heat's coming, or in any which way, shape or fashion, you know, whether it's physical stuff or mental stuff.
Well, that's why you get to help people, because you have that. See, if you don't understand yourself, how can you understand someone else? And no one knows you better than you. You hang around yourself 24/7. So you can have the best mentor in the world. You can have the best psych in the world. You can have the best, you know, support in the world. But unless you can support yourself, you know, and you can understand yourself, why, and sometimes you don't know why. And why am I feeling this way? Why am I behaving this way? Sometimes you don't have the answer, but if you keep asking yourself that question enough, then that allows you, because I can go to you, Jake, you know what, I keep asking myself, how come I'm responding in this way? And I just don't get it. Then you can, you know what I mean, is that you can genuinely go to someone and ask that question, but you've got to ask yourself that question first, rather than having to get put in a situation where you have to go and see someone and they start trying to analyse you.
Yeah. And it's hard to, like, you know, because dealing with these people, like when it's got to do with individuals that have these psychosocial disabilities or intellectual and or if you're looking at acquired disabilities, because we've got, you know, if it's got individuals that have or acquired brain injuries or ABIs or TBIs now, traumatic brain injuries, and just seeing how the brain chemistry can just balance out and, you know, but what that can put out and, you know, when that's, and it's a bit of a balance too, because certain behaviour, it's intriguing, but it's a bit of a balance where we've got clinicians involved and when we're working with individuals, but just seeing when individuals question themselves because they've had this TBI, if it's got to do with a car accident or whatever it may be. And, it's hard too when people are sort of questioning themselves of why am I acting this way or why is this happening? But, we try and give individuals the tools as best as we can, and they can't help it any which way, shape or form because it's just the way that the brain chemistry works now. But then we just try and balance things in a way to help ultimately keep them safe, like for themselves or the community or whatever the situation may be. But it's all about balance, no matter where the person is, mentally or physically. But food can always help. Food is medicine along with everything else. So, yeah, it's all a bit of a balance. And it's interesting having this yarn with you now because I know, like, with your background and with footy and with all the mix of what you've been involved there and when it's got to do with broadcasting and everything else and, how we're having this discussion about, food and when it's got to do with the mental side of things, when it's got to do with the physical side of things. But how have you seen this work in with what you've discovered and, talking to Minnie and going through a bit of that roller coaster there and really taking that on board. But how have you sort of rolled that out into not just your personal life, and with some of the work that you're doing, but even some of the young blokes that you're working with, some of the work that you're doing with some of the football clubs you're being involved with, do you sort of push that on them, like where you start with this, like if it's got to do with certain food components and what goes in? Because they're already, athletes are getting after it. They're already, but you got plenty of athletes that eat crap and do this and do that anyway, and that's not the best for you because they're still young blokes at the end of the day, even though they're, because you could be dealing with Harold Matts or whatever and they're young blokes, but even, if they're in first leagues, you still got some 18, 19 young 20-year-olds and, they might think that's okay, but they don't have the full scope or, intellectually they're not, where some other individuals are, or they just don't have the education because you don't know what part of the country they've come from and they've just, luckily they got the genetics and, yeah, that's sweet, but they're still burning fuel like no tomorrow. So are you passing that knowledge on so they get this full scope and then some of the mindset stuff after this, or how's that rolling out?
Yeah, again, it's all connected to each other. So, like Anthony does our food stuff, but my side's emotional regulation and mindset. And look, and you got to understand, I got to use my memory that, okay, these people aren't science geeks, and I wasn't either. And someone would have come to me back in the day and told me about what to eat and all that sort of stuff. I may have had some resistance to it. That's okay. That's fine. But they also, again, there's a whole lot of different validations that you can give people access to. So why do, I always ask players, why do 85% of Olympic athletes visualise? What do they do mindfulness practices for? There must be something in it, right? So you kind of need that validation to get someone's attention. And with young people these days, you've got to ask questions, not give them the answers, because information's rife, right? We can get it from Meta, we can get it from ChatGTP, we can get it from Google, wherever you get it from, right?
TikTok with the youngsters.
Yeah. So you got to ask the right questions, because that's the one thing that AI can't do. It doesn't ask questions. So you got to ask people, so what is it? Do you want to be a high-performing athlete? What other high-performing athletes do? Do you actually understand how food impacts not only your athletic ability but your cognitive ability, how it impacts your mood? Do you know how to meditate? Because you know that when you physically, you load to your capacity, then you recover, because you can't exercise all day. So, recovery, there's ice baths and, you chill out and all that sort of stuff. So how are you switching off mentally? Because people are looking at phones. The ability to be stimulated now exists more than ever. So how are you switching off? And someone, I don't know, must some time ago made sitting with your eyes closed woo-woo. Well, explain to me why sitting there and trying not to think of anything is woo or thinking about one thing. You know, people understand I can put your brain into high beta mode right now by making a really loud noise. I can do it right now. Okay, your brain just went brrr, like that. Sorry.
Mate, it did.
But
you'd see my reaction on camera.
So it's got to make sense to you that I can put your brain into theta mode by listening to certain music. Okay, you can do that. So you just got to explain it.
Talk to me through that. Like when you're talking about, you said beta mode, yeah?
Yeah, high beta. Sorry.
Oh, high beta.
So
sorry.
you want to get your brain down into where you get, like if you're doing visualization, for example, you really just want to chill. You want to get down into theta mode, which is, into a place where your brain waves are just basically slowed down.
It's funny you say that, like, for me, and when it's got to do with, no one's perfect, and I'm always trying to continuously work on myself, but, and me being, where life once was and where it is today, and me being a C5, C6 incomplete quadriplegic, and sort of all the situations that I have to deal with being a quad these days, but just sort of where I have to mentally sort of focus myself and get things to slow down to make sure that, I've got all this carry on when it's got to do with me being a quad. I don't whinge and carry on, just get on with it. But just where I have to sort of focus myself and sort of calm, and where you've touched on the whole breathing thing, it's trying to have that internal structure of just getting the diaphragm going a certain way. I don't personally, I haven't gone through any of that coaching or doing that. It's just trying to slow down for a minute and getting the mind to sort of focus in a way. And even this is when, I'm laying in bed, because I can't roll or move. Like, I'm in a fixed sort of position. So it's trying to be comfortable in that uncomfortable bloody situation, and plus got a business to run and doing all this carry on, and I'm trying to not because my mind can tangent, go from one thing to the, and I can let that hop around, whether it's work and all this stuff I shouldn't be thinking about at 1 a.m. So it's trying to put myself somewhere, and within that scene or if I'm up in the chair and just trying to slow down, it's almost without closing the eyes, it's having an internal meditation without, being in a room, darkened lights and all that. Do you understand where I'm coming from in a way?
Yeah, but you need to find your way of doing it, not the way that everyone does it. So here's my point. So I made the whistle point, right? So that you got to understand that there's certain tones that can put you into a relaxed state, whether you like it or not. So if I hyperventilated for the next 4 minutes, what would happen? I'd pass out.
You'd be on the floor.
I'd pass out. Okay, no choice, would I?
No.
Because my vagus nerve's signaling my brain, dude, there's something going on, you need to lay down. So it's got to make sense to you that if I breathe deeply and diaphragmically, I'm signaling my brain I'm safe. So it's just that I have to reverse engineer. You get people's attention by giving them the bad news first. So me whistling out loud got your attention, right?
Oh, mate, yeah.
So then it kind of made sense to you that if I listen to tones, if I want to chill and give my brain a rest, because I can tell you're not an underthinker, right? I can tell that because you care, right? And you want to make a difference to people and your business that you got here. But at some stage, you also know that if all you do is think, there's a consequence for it, right? Mm. So you got to learn to shut down. So you got to find your technique of shutting down, whatever it may be, and we've all got friends that do it in different ways. We've got friends that go out in the bush. I've got mates that surf. You got to work out your way. I sit there with my eyes closed, all right?
Yeah. Okay.
And I do a meditation practice. But that's my way of doing it. It doesn't mean it's the only way of doing it.
Yeah.
And it's effective for me. It really works for me. And it's the same with, listening to tones and my breathing. I know that if I'm going into a gnarly situation, that I know that when I'm walking along, no one can tell I'm doing it. If I breathe in deeply and diaphragmically through my nose for 5 steps, and I breathe out for 7 steps, and I breathe in for 5 steps, I know that I'm signaling my brain I'm safe, right? Whether it's a gnarly situation or not. So I go in there and I have better mental clarity. So there's just, again, what tends to be the modern way of life is we get the bad news, right? Because that's when you turn on, Channel 9, you're not hearing about the amazing stuff that you're doing for people. You're hearing about, something awful. So I just sort of reverse engineer things to say to people, you understand that if you think that or feel that certain way, there's a ramification for it. Eventually it's going to be a chronic injury or a chronic illness if you keep thinking that way. So it's got to make sense to you that if you can move to the other side of it, it's going to be good for you.
Oh, it's insane, like how much the mind, how much it can bring heat on the body in a negative way, and you bring it up before when you're talking about stress and how can that bring the levels up, when you're talking about BP, the pressure that it puts on the heart, all of a sudden your BP's up 200 and whatever and you're bloody on the floor and you've stroked out. Like, that's pretty serious. And, and I worried, and there's a lot of worry that I'll have about that for when I'm looking at the general landscape of individuals, just people I know where stress is that factor. And it's super important to, because not everybody can sort of shut off in certain ways. Like, I go through a bit of stress, but I've got my own way of dealing with it and it's like I can almost like pull focus out and know how to switch it off when I need it to. I can elevate and things go up and depending what it is, but it's like going back to that internal dialogue when the body's in a certain flight or fight situation, whether it's got to do with a meeting or whether it's got to do with general life or whatever curveball was thrown at you. So how do you handle that before shit hits a fan? Or if it's something small or whatever it may be, but it's just trying to find that internal balance. But let's go into your tones that you were talking about. So what do you mean by that when you're finding a tone? Are you talking about if it's got to do with sound and decibels and where things can balance out? Can I just say one thing before you go into it? Like, it's a funny thing with me, what people don't or can't understand. For me, like, I love metal, like heavy metal music, big on it, like, and there's a lot of screaming and all that sort of carry on. But I put that on and that gets me to a calming place, even though there's a lot of high-end stuff going on. But it's funny how people, but there's more to that because it's me knowing how to, because I used to play electric acoustic guitar before being in a chair, and me almost sort of visualising where my fingers are going on the fretboard as well. But just also when it's got to do with the tone of it, what it means, sort of, the vocals sound harsh to some, but it's different to me, but also the messages in the music as well. So,
well, it's different to you, and so let's just drop the tones for a tick. You love it,
100%. Love it,
and like I'm at ease saying love now, but it used to be a tough thing for a dude in my orbit to say. But you got to understand that when you love something, regardless of the tone, regardless of how you breathe, is that's. You got a screaming kid, for example, that's yours. So the tone might be, but I love that kid. And just, like I might be laughing at it. So that.
Yeah. I get where you're coming from.
So
there.
We all have things that can override different things. Tone is all, when you start talking about theta tones and that sort of stuff, they're just deep sort of music. That's really deep. And like humming, that also stimulates your vagus nerve, which is a nerve that goes through every major organ in your body. And the signaling of your vagus nerve is 80% to your brain from your body and 20% from your, downwards. So there's a lot of signaling going on from your body up to your brain through this vagus nerve. So
right.
And
is that like through... because when you say that, I just go boom. Like when you're talking about Eastern cultures, Buddhism, meditation, and when that sort of floats into what they're doing, is that along the lines
It's
of...
not just Eastern culture. It's every culture has one. You know, look at
But I'm
Indigenous
just saying,
culture.
yeah,
And have a listen to the stuff that they do and some of the tones of it when they're relaxing, not when they're firing up, but when they're relaxing.
didgeridoo. You know, you got the high pitches, but a lot of that's even through the high. You got that circular breathing that's carrying that constant low tone.
Yeah. So there's a whole lot of stuff that we could go on for ages, but then when there's movement associated to it, and what we do know is that a contraction of muscles, for example, they're like endocrine systems. This is new science that you know, when you contract your muscles, no matter how you do it, whether you're dancing, exercising, gymming, however you do it, doesn't matter what muscles you contract, okay, that you're excreting the hormones of hope into your system through muscle contraction, because we're designed to move. Our lymphatic system, which is a circulatory system, not our cardiovascular system, which has a heart, is stimulated by movement. So we're meant to move. However it is, this is movement. I'm moving.
Yeah, that's it.
I'm moving, right? I'm not talking about exercise. So there's just some really fundamental things when we talk about people's well-being and their health that that's too easy. We got to look past it. We love complexity in modern life. You know, so when we talk about breathing, which is free, and you're doing it anyway, you might as well learn how to do it slightly better. You know, the other analogy, whether it be breathing, whether it be movement, whether it be eating the right thing, all that, whether it be, I always say, look, it's easier to sit on the lounge than it is to exercise. Yeah. And exercise is about you, not about what you've been watching or what people think exercise is. It's easier to sit on the lounge and do nothing, right? It's easier to have a Macca's than it is to cook a really healthy home-cooked meal. It's easier to have the shits than it is to be happy. Yeah? There's a whole lot of stuff, but what in a life of significance is easy? That's the answer. And like you're the greatest example ever, Jake. Like if you took the easy route,
I don't want to be saying that.
No,
just having a go.
Well, let me say, if you you don't need to be humble. If you took the easy route, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you because it would be much easier for you not to be doing this. Is that right?
That's right.
You know, it'd be much easier for you looking after yourself than trying to change other people's lives. So anything of consequence in life takes sacrifice isn't the right word because you obviously love doing this. You can allow yourself to have fun doing it, but it would be easier not to. So it's just all that stuff around, the simple stuff around how you eat, how you breathe, how you move, how you exercise, how you feel, what you think, all right? Because you think your thoughts. So who has the biggest impact on your thinking? You do.
That's it. And I just want that to echo, mate, whether it's not just for my own benefit, if I can, it's like having this conversation with you here. Like if it's any little thing, like, I love knowledge. I love the convo I'm having with you now, stuff I'm picking up on that, I'm going to take on for myself when I wheel out this door. But it's little things that I hope people out in the atmosphere that can latch onto, that can take it for themselves, where they're like, boom, righto, well, that little bit of, I might look into breathing. Despite if you got a disability or not, it's little things that people can take on themselves. And that's what I try and push out there. And it's got to do with, you don't have to give that, if you're not used to that system, if it's got to do with breathing, gym, just being able to get up and move. Like if you're someone that has to spend 22 hours a day in bed because that's your physical limitations and you've got no other way but within a 2-hour time frame you can do X, Y, and Z to move or whatever it may be, you don't have to give 100%. If you're giving 10% on that day, something. 5% the next, that's something. If it's 50, even better. At least you're doing something, but keep the momentum because as soon as that starts dropping down, you're going into that negative effect.
And that's just the greatest advice ever because what we know about human behaviour and human capacity is that how good would it be if you just had to get fit once? That'd be unreal, and then you're done for the rest of life. How good would it be if you just had to learn once? But knowledge is forever evolving, isn't it? So
it's not like we're in the Matrix. You just download it and then you're done. Like it's continuous, mate.
I wish. So all this stuff is an ongoing process that you need to make fun, but you need to understand that you've got to do the work, however you want to define it. And it's so it's like the breathing thing is that guess what? The more you do it, the better you get at it. The more the more I lift a weight, the more I can lift up, right? So if I need to lift up this chair, I can lift this chair up because I look after myself. So there's just capacities that you can elevate by doing things consistently in a methodical way. So that you got to bring them in as behaviour so that I can access being calm, not because I'm some guru, but because I know I've been doing the breathing for a long time, and I know that if I'm feeling slightly stressed about something, I know the breathing that I'll utilise will send that signal to my brain saying, you're sweet, mate. There's no need to be, anxious about this. It's not because I'm amazing. It's because I've just done it for a long time. It's like anything. You're able to draw on knowledge, okay, because you've got that capacity because you didn't learn it once. You don't learn things once.
No.
You got to, and the service that you deliver is based on accumulated knowledge and wisdom. And, and people you've got your own unique skill set around the wisdom that you've got.
And are you seeing and you're talking about that and knowledge, and people are starting to get it more readily available and fast-tracked, right? When they got, you got these mini computers in your hand and what you can tap into. So are you seeing that within the younger generations or the younger environment where they're starting to be more health conscious, not when it's got to do with the physical nature, but when it's got to do with taking in the knowledge of how you can effectively mentally get yourself on a different plane?
My short answer to that is I don't know. And I'm comfortable in saying that these days. That was a really hard thing for me to say. I don't know. This is what I am seeing, like when we do leadership programs in my business, the Changeroom. And what I'm seeing is that effective leadership of younger people isn't about telling them what to do. Because what my model of leadership when I came through was I had to have knowledge that I shared. This is what you need to do, Jake, and this is how you do it. And that's now redundant.
Yeah.
People don't need to hear that. But if I can ask you the right questions about, what you need to do, and I can get you to come up with the answers, I go, wow, okay, that's a really good idea, Jake. Even if I know the idea, it's not about, I told you that. That doesn't work anymore. And that was look, I'm not being critical of that way, but and that was effective for how I had to learn, but it's not effective now because knowledge is like accessible in seconds, as we discussed before. So it's about asking the right questions of people.
And if you're asking the right questions, where do you think this is going to go? Because it's sort of scary and good at the same time, but it's going to be good to see what it starts to formulate when it's looking at. And I know it's not going to have all the answers when I'm talking about AI, but I was just listening to the radio this morning and they were talking about quantum computing, and Australia's investing millions, mate, I think even billions into this, right? And I know they're kicking it off in QLD, Queensland, I think, where they're going to have a main centre for it. So we're not left behind. But it's going to be interesting to see where it brings some of these answers forward, like when it's got to do with, if it's got to do with the healthy eating components or if it's got to do with other medications, but just some of the answers. So people aren't getting certain cancers, people aren't getting certain health ailments or disabilities. I don't know. Like, I'm just putting it out there, but it's going to be interesting to see the acceleration rate because it's scary where it is now, mate.
We're going through the roof. And look, people of my vintage are resistant to it. I'm the exact opposite because you can be resistant to it all you like, but it's coming, right? And change can be very daunting. even if it's for the better. But it's coming. So, but what I've learned, I use AI all the time.
It's great.
And what I've learned in the use of it, and I was really lucky, the CEO I work with made me aware of it 3 years ago. So, and I started fiddling with it then.
You've been in early, mate.
Well, again, that doesn't matter, does it? I just wasn't my idea, just got told about it. Obviously, I was writing shit reports and he said, put it through this, it'll look better. But what I've found by using it is I've got more time. So it's how I use that time that it's really important. But in the leadership context, what I've seen is that knowledge is now not as important, but wisdom is. And showing empathy and building relationships. See, you can't build relationships through AI. The relationship, if I'm sitting here with you, and this is the prime human need, is safety, and we feel safe when we're around people we trust. That's what, and your culture calls it belonging, right? Same thing. So that's the one thing that we're evolving to is that hopefully the wisdom and relationship, because we've gone away from that. People are so immersed in these little pieces of plastic that we have with us.
I know.
I'm not being judgmental.
Yeah, I'm guilty of it too.
I'm not being judgmental at all, but I hope that AI the amount of time that it gives us allows us then to go back to spending time with each other because we're all too busy. And that's a lie now. It's a lie because we've
Why
got...
is it a lie, mate?
Because
Fill us in, mate.
Well, because I think AI for me, for example, has given me more time.
Yep, I agree.
What would take me, reports that would take me forever to do, and even when I'm analysing my own thoughts and I just want to collate them, it takes half the time than me having to read back all this weird stuff I've written down.
Yeah.
All right, so it just accelerates everything. So how are you going to use that time? That's what I ask young people. I need to know because this is going through the roof. How are you going to use that time? What are you going to do with it?
Yeah.
I hope they say, you know what, I'm going to spend more time with my friends, my family. I'm going to actually connect with people. I'm going to find new groups to go to. I'm a dad of 4 daughters and, I can see how it isolates some people.
It does.
And again, I'm not being judgmental because I've had adversity and I've lived from my phone.
But it can give you false expectations of how the world works or how people may think about you or how you may think about the rest of the world if it's got to do with all sorts of scenarios, so which can be tricky. But
yeah, but again, you got to come understand my subconscious conditioning from being a young person is that respect was always attached to people's knowledge. Yeah?
Yeah.
And so what's going to happen to that?
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting. And you've seen it over time too where some of these, with the younger generation and what they're tapping into, but just their knowledge base. And, yeah, that's great. And they know a lot, and not all do, but just also the negative effects of having their heads buried within. And not just young people. Like, I know there's plenty of old people that bloody spend too much time on whatever social media platform and they're probably chewing up 6 hours a day, but it's not great. But going back to the ChatGPT thing or other situations like that, like where and that's where I was going. Like one of my worst fears, and it always is, the thing that gives me anxiety the most, I'd say, is father time. Whether I'm sitting there, like whether it's got to do, and it shouldn't, because I try and compartmentalise my day or week or whatever it may be, but it's always having the clock on. And I think it's just having that on life, really. So it's just trying to balance what I can without, taking on too much. And, yeah, we've got all this AI, but let's take advantage of it, but then not make more work for yourself just because you can cheat sheet it for that, but don't then pile up the rest and try and forge ahead. Like, try and bring in more individuals if you need to. Like, if we need to hire more individuals in here in the office or wherever it may be, just try and be smarter about it. And like, some of the, coming up through the construction industry when I was a young fella, it's, work smarter, not harder, so, and that sings true because you don't want to be blowing your back out and you want to be doing things the right way, so.
Yeah, and I don't want to be too deep and meaningful around that, but as you say, Father Time hangs out with Mother Earth, and what Mother Earth and Father Time will both tell you is that the amount of time you have here is finite.
Yeah, it scares me, mate. Jesus.
No, well, don't be scared. You need to embrace. It's like a gift they've given you every day because we don't know. None of us know.
Yeah.
When that, and don't want to get too deep about it, but one of the things that you've got to.
I just think for me, I just want to do certain things on this planet before I'm gone, and I think it's just. And I'm not saying just because I'm a quad and I'm going to go earlier or any of that sort of business, but there's just all these things that I want to do, not just for myself, things I want to do for other people and, for my wife and family and other things and just general community stuff.
Yeah, and again...
I'm not saying leaving this legacy and all this carry on, but...
Can I reframe that for you?
Yeah, go ahead.
First of all, there's stuff you've done. Is that pretty remarkable? You're allowed to say yes.
Yeah, I'm pretty stoked.
There's stuff you're doing. Is that pretty remarkable? How about you just take a tick to reflect on that? And if you keep doing that, there might be there's things that I want to do that maybe I'll never get to do. I'm going to have a shot at it. The bucket list is a long list, places I want to go in particular. But, also like some people are just so, I'll be happy when I've done all that stuff, I'll be happy. No, you do it now. Be happy now and then be happy with the next bit of stuff you do and you'll get there. You'll get to I'm sitting in a room where I'm not saying I'm intuitive, but I'm pretty sure that you're going to get a lot of that bucket list that you've got there. You'll tick off a lot of things. So you don't want to be, but and I've done that. I'm only saying that from a place of wisdom that I've done, where I'll go and I reflect back and I've done some extraordinary things. And today I was with a group of people that were injured, facing challenge, and just to hang out with them for a day and maybe make that much difference to their life. Again, you got to acknowledge, well, that was a good day. I got to come here and chew your ears off on the way home. That's a part of a good day.
100%.
And I'm only saying this because I've done the opposite to this. So often that you fail to recognise what you're doing because you're so immersed in the things that you need to achieve.
And you get lost in it.
Yeah, and it's the little subtlety about how are you being rather than what are you doing. Because there's no matter what you do, if you're being miserable, why would you do it? Even if some of the stuff that you do is not exactly what you do, if you can find a way, do the hard thing, remember? Because this is easier said than done. Sometimes being happy or feeling rewarding about some of the stuff you're doing is tough, right?
And that's what drives me nuts, this just makes me think of general society and when I'm looking at, because you hear it and see it all over social media and the news, it seems like it's a lot easier for people to carry on and hate and all this bullshit that goes on in the general society than to be positive and push forward and forge ahead.
Do the hard things.
That's it, man. Stay in your lane and get into it and get after it and have a go. Keep the wheels turning.
Because all that stuff you said's easy. People take the easiest route. It's easier for me to bag people. It's easy for me to – obviously I don't know how the trolling thing works, but
it's sad.
That's easier than coming up with something, positive. And I get people that try positive stuff will get bagged, but I just always say, look,
it's better than not, though.
Yeah. Well, what I'm saying is take the harder route because it's more rewarding and it's fun.
Yeah.
How can doing that other stuff be fun? Can't be fun bagging people.
Yeah, because that's it. And it's crap, so.
Well, I could bag you about your shirt.
Come on, mate. Don't you like the white polka dot? She goes all right.
Okay.
Got the brown buttons.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. I digress, but no, anyway.
What about, all right. We're going on to your shirt now.
It's called style, mate. Obviously something that's completely foreign to you.
Yeah, about 50 years ago. No, joking.
But that's what I mean, you know. That's what people do. And that, like, we're having fun with it, right?
100%, yeah.
But some people, I could sit here and look for what's wrong in this conversation. And I could sit in this and I could explore why I didn't say this or that. But what about if instead of looking for what's wrong, what if I look for what's right?
That's it.
You know, and that's what we're so conditioned in modern life, to do the easy thing and look what's wrong, what I can't do. But what about what you can do? Like, out of anyone that I've ever met, you
said it right. What you can do. And then that's when I'm like, you got to find, whether it's like within your disability or, you know, it's finding your ability within your disability, wherever you're, like you put where the tone's at.
Yeah.
You find your decibel level, and then you just work on that.
Well, you got more power to share that message than 99% of the world's population. You imagine, like, if you were focusing on what you can't do, we're not having this conversation. You know what I mean? But what you're doing is you're focusing on what you can do and making a difference to thousands and thousands of people's lives.
Yeah.
That's a pretty cool thing.
I do feel fortunate when it is, you know, when I know that it doesn't matter if it's work related or not, but if it is making a difference in any way, shape or form, if it's got to do with the physical nature side of things, of getting in people to help for certain reasons, or if it's got to do with knowledge, information, whatever it is, it's, that's a bonus. And I think I'm on the path of doing the right thing. And I think that's really important and I feel, empowered to do that more. The more that I get out there to, spread the wheels and yarn up and get the messages out there. And if it's, any little thing, whether it's got to do with if mob that are incarcerated, whether they've got a disability or not, whether it's got to do with a person walking down the street, if it's got to do with a politician in the federal or state parliament, whoever, so it doesn't matter if it's a prime minister or the next door neighbour, if it's having a yarn and, if it's making some little bit of impact, I'm happy.
Can I pull you up on a subtlety there?
Right.
And I'm being serious about it, and it's something that you need. It's, again, this is the power for yourself, of elevating your own well-being, but elevating others. You don't think you're doing the right thing. You don't believe. You know you are, okay? And I know that's a subtlety, isn't it? I think that's what you said. I think I'm out there and, I think I'm just trying to do my best. No, you are.
Yeah, I want to.
Yeah, but you need to know that you are. And knowing is a very powerful thing. And what that does is that brings power to you. It's not like you're up yourself, but I know I make a difference to people's lives. I know that. And I'm at ease at saying that now, because I used to think I did. I believed the processes that we had in place would make a difference to people. So if I come here and say, I believe, what I can do for you will be helpful, I know. Different, isn't it?
It is.
And I just, I'm listening to your dialect there, and I'm seeing your staff here, and I'm looking at the difference you're making to people's lives. You need to know that you're making a difference. And that's, again, with the people that you're trying to make a difference to, them believing that they could be a better person coming out of incarceration, them thinking that they're going to go down the right pathway, as opposed to knowing,
it's you're hitting it on the head there, and it's also to a system as well. Like, I'm really fortunate that I sit back and I think, I am doing the right thing. That's why, like what I was talking about before, where off camera, like say with the NDIS, like you've got the scheme itself, you've got the board of the NDIS, like you probably would have heard of Kurt Fernley, like he's the chair of the NDIS, and I've been fortunate enough to be part of groups that speak to the board or speak to the NDIS, like where I'll get chosen a part of, say, a First Nations group, and then I'm one of, say, 15 around the country that get to make collective decisions, like where we talk about what's going on in the community, in the environment, all around First Nations disability topics. And that's just one group I'm part of. There's other, it's children and young people's another one, and there's other ones that I'm a part of too. But then it's, you know, us yarning up and talk about certain matters that are happening in the community. And if what we say is logic and sings true, like, then it's going to roll over to the board, and if it trickles over to them, and if they think it's going to make effective change out of the community and help the scheme as a whole, this $1 billion scheme, huge, the second largest reform since Medicare, and if that's going to make effective change, whether it's in First Nations community or community as a whole, then I feel fortunate. I think I'm doing the right thing here, because then I'm getting asked or slotted into these groups, and, you know, and then being able to yarn up on that stage where I do want to continuously make effective change, like for a whole scheme. And it's, you know, a government-built scheme, and government works slow because you're looking after millions of bloody people. But if it's any little tiny thing, like going back to the 5 to 10%, if you're getting anything over the line, it's something, yeah?
Yeah, and again, you need to, that's where the momentum comes from. And you get momentum from absolute knowing. And that's what I'd encourage you to do, is that you need to know that. And sometimes, look, you have to alter your direction a little bit with the understanding that you do have. But you're definitely heading in the right direction, definitely. So it's an important thing, particularly when you're dealing with politicians, because, and I'm fortunate enough to be able to do the same thing in different areas, and you can't go there and tell them that you think that you've got an idea here. You got to say, look, I know this will work. It's like what we talked about, for example, with the culling of, you know, certain animals out west and what that could do, you know, for the communities.
100%.
I don't think it'll work.
You bloody know it will.
Yeah.
Drives me nuts, doesn't it?
Yeah. So, again, someone needs to hear that enough to go, okay, let's pilot that around one area. Let's pilot it. Let's put the resources there to do it well, and let's see what the impacts on the health of those local people are, because you're going to have to wean them off sugar to start off, because it's one of the most addictive substances on the planet.
Ding, 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 dopamine's going off when you see that certain food item.
Yeah, and then, you know, see what the health impacts are. I don't. Yeah, there's no way that it's going to be anything else but positive.
Yeah, and it's interesting you say that, because you hit it on the head. It's when it's got to do with you seeing that, and it's, you know, the mind's almost hitting it. You know, well, it's true. The mind's hitting that food, thinking about going it before it's actually ingesting. When it's got to do with the sugar, the dopamine's hitting up. Right, I've had that fix. So it's, you know, weaning off the sugar, but it's almost like on the back end, it's making sure that people mentally can be equipped with the knowledge of how to balance that out too, of, you know, how can you mentally sort of step back away from that. It's like any bloody drug.
Oh, yes.
You know?
It's like me and cookies and cream ice cream. I love it. I just can't have it in my house, otherwise the whole tub's going down.
Yep.
So, you know, but I guess the short way of saying it is that there's ideas there that you need to share.
And what he's doing, what's on the forefront now, like when you're looking at, say, Minnie and yourself, like if you're Anthony Minicello. So if it's got to do with, you know, the awesome work that you're doing on the Changeroom, but what's the sort of behind the scenes? And, you know, without giving away, you know, too much juice, because there's probably certain things that you're doing out with work and when you're consulting or doing that, you know, like put whatever you feel comfortable out in the atmosphere. But I think it's important because, man, you're blowing me away with what we're talking about now, because I was going to be yarning up about footy in the mix and all that sort of stuff. But this is really important stuff, I think, like sport is. But when you're looking at what we're talking about here, this is affecting everyone from grassroots to, doesn't matter, from kids to adults to elderly. Like, mate, what's going on?
So I'll give you as short as or brief a description as possible. But the big thing in workplace at the moment is what they call psychosocial safety, right? And if I use a high-performance model, in high-performance sport, you've got to be aware of the impacts of injury, right? And you've got to have preventative processes in place to stop that injury. And the good thing about prevention of injury is a lot of the time it actually elevates performance. It's the same thing, like whether it be building strength mentally, physically or emotionally. The more strength that you develop there, the less likely there's injury. But you know that injury is going to happen, right? It's high-performance sport, so you've got to have things in place to treat the injury straight away. However, the focus of all the athletes, of the team, is not on injury. It's on you being your best. It's on you being able to contribute to an environment that makes our team better. What I'm noticing in a lot of the government agencies that I work in, guess where their focus is on? Injury, psychosocial, risk. So everyone's focused on the risk, not the performance. So we have a program that we've done preventative work, particularly in correctional services to start off with for staff, that focuses on biopsychosocial performance, which is physical, mental, and emotional psychological safety. And and there's things that they're not complex. It's like what we've already talked about: how you breathe, how you move, emotional regulation, what you eat, all this sort of stuff. That we've had pretty incredible results. So we've got some pilots coming up that we're moving out of just correctional services and we're going hopefully into health. But the goal for the Changeroom is to introduce a whole of government program that doesn't need the Changeroom.
So that's what it is. So it is the Changeroom. So it's more than just a bloody podcast. That's what you're calling your actual program itself.
The program's been running, the Changeroom program's been running for 8 years, predominantly in workers' compensation for injured workers, both physically and psych injury workers.
Yeah, okay.
And then we moved into the preventative space because guess what? It's a little bit like what I said there before.
It's better than cure, right?
Yeah, but the content's exactly the same. All right, let me rephrase that.
But is it
It's recontextualised.
Yeah.
But really the same thing that's going to stop an injury will also help you recover from an injury. A lot of it's similar. I shouldn't say exactly the same. And then there's a leadership component because obviously if this is not led properly, the whole purpose of how we do things in the preventative space is that if we have to be there for more than 18 months, we've let you down. The program doesn't work. You want to be there so that everyone understands what they need to do. They make each other accountable for doing it. There's processes in place that because I always say to people, do I know your environment better or do you know it better? Do you know you better than me? So you guys, you need to work out what's going to work best in this environment and what's going to work best for you, and we need to get some momentum so you don't need us here. Because if I strongly believe that we can't introduce practices that are sustainable, we're just another box-ticking thing that happens in so much wellbeing stuff across industries. Just tick that box. We've done a wellbeing program. We've got apples on the lunchtime table, and I'm not a fan of that. We're not box tickers.
No, and that's the thing. And I know you just said apples, but because leading back to what you said earlier in the discussion when you're talking about some of the percentages overseas, when you're talking about overall prison food, and when we've gone through how food can affect people and how it was helping the individuals that either work in those environments or if it's got to do with the people that are incarcerated themselves. So is there anything on the horizon? Because obviously we're in New South Wales here. So if you're looking at New South Wales Justice Health, or are they going to start, going into the kitchens and making some sort of change? And look, man, that's a massive scheme, like trying to change overall. Because
I wish. So
we got nearly 30 odd jails, I think, in New South Wales.
We tried it in a youth justice centre because I actually
down the road here, or at Colburn.
We tried it in the youth justice centre.
Okay, we'll just go there. Yep.
Because it was research that was done. So there's one of my favourite integrated medical practitioners who's world famous. He's an American doctor called Dr. Mark Hyman. He wrote
Mark Hyman.
He wrote a book called Food. Oh, he's written a lot of books, but he wrote a book called Food Fix, and that's where I got that research from about they changed the inmates' food from inmate food. I don't know if you've ever seen food that's in a correctional facility.
Yeah.
It's not great, to whole food.
No. Yeah.
And that's where they had all those behavioural changes. And it makes sense, right? It just makes sense. So we wanted to try and get them to grow their own and get it. But it was, we were probably a little bit early and a bit too ambitious with it. But again, it's
getting them to grow their own food too in the yard and that, eh?
Yeah. Well, what else are they going to do with the yard?
100%.
So all I know is that the research was done, provided results that were like, well, if you want to deal with less issues and you want to get these people out, and rather than, because most people come back, right, get them out and start on a functional life. There's enough, like look at all the stuff they do in Scandinavia where they actually, when you're in there, if you're in there, you can't get out unless you've done some sort of education.
Yeah, okay. You're making me think of what I saw the other day on Japan, like what they make in their prisons. It's like they're at a bloody 5-star restaurant. It's insane.
Oh, okay. Well, and a lot of our stuff that they do in our prisons are great. There's so much manufacturing that goes on in prisons. I didn't even realise. And it's a really good skill set that inmates can develop. But there's just a way of creating more functional behaviour by making people, again, eat more healthily, but also interact in a healthy way as well.
Yeah, and you're trying to eliminate recidivism, like recidivism as in being systemic cycles of people. They're learning, they're manufacturing goods and that's great, but step outside of the prison and go muck up and bang back inside. Because sometimes, going back to, sometimes life can be easy going back inside because it's 3 square meals a day.
I've heard that.
Mate, I've seen it.
Yeah, we hear that a lot from people, and I have nothing but massive respect for the people, and it's obviously been an industry that's had some dysfunction that we hear about all the time. But the amount of functional people work and what they actually do for our communities, I guess it's undervalued. It's like we've done a lot of work with police, and I've always had our preconceived ideas about police, but I'm not doing that. I'm not doing what they do.
That's what you hear this morning.
Ambulance and
the pay rise that they got a 40% pay rise for New South Wales Police. I think it's deserved.
Yeah, they'd also changed their retirement process, and that's great to hear. That's great to hear.
A lot of mental load, because I know people that have where they've got this very senior roles and where people are retired, but it's and then it's all this catch up now of what was, not just because they're retired and life is what it is now, but that mental load of it's almost like PTSD in a way, So, and it's not easy to balance, like a lot of stuff that you're seeing visually and trying to handle that. Some people can take that on the chin and move on, but not everybody's different up here, So it's depending on how they deal with it, Some people can, like I said, take that on and move ahead with it, and it's about dealing with it in a certain way. And can I just go back to, before I forget, so going back to people being incarcerated, so, and I think people sort of got a taste for this, and I mean the world, when I'm talking about COVID, and I'd been dealing with individuals that have been locked up, kids and adults, right? And, we need more rehabilitation, not incarceration, or it's done a different way. Because now that we've had a bit of COVID and you've seen all these individuals locked up in their own homes, in their own environments, and we've seen how everybody's been stressed out, and seeing the mental load of how that's, just put people down and just trying to bring themselves up. And we've seen that across the globe. We've seen that in our local communities. We've seen that in our country. And I'm like, think of how these people are handling it, like when they're in 4 walls, concrete walls. And I'm seeing kids dealing with juvenile justice, where I know some of these kids are being thrown in solitary confinement. They're 14, and where they've been in there for 15 days and where, you know, there might be, like you would have seen, I don't know if you've been in a prison toilet or whatever, but you've seen where they, you know, hang a number 1 and 2, and then above that's where the drinking water is. And, you know, it's a stainless steel job. So then they've frustrated, they've been locked up, they're not really seeing anyone or anything, and then they've booted that. And then that's an extra charge that gets thrown on their time that they're already spending in there. And it's just, these cycles just keep going. And that's kids.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And then general society, you get a little bit of this where you're staying in your own house for 6 months. Think how, you know, these people are dealing with this stuff. And yeah, some people have done the wrong thing and they're locked up, but there's different ways of how we should be handling this.
Couldn't agree more. And the difficulty for it is the people that are the officers in those situations, that they haven't made the system. They've just got to operate around how the system's.
Yeah, they're the cog in that machine, mate.
Yeah, and a lot of the time they take heat as well, and it's difficult. Some of them, you know, there are very few that don't, you know, operate in an appropriate way, but the majority of them do, and they're good people that are operating in a system that could be better. There's obviously some things that in stuff like that is that I don't know that environment as well as they do, but you know, there's evidence around the world that if we were giving, while we had those people in there, we were giving them resources and approach to life that allowed them to actually improve rather than just do time, kind of makes sense that they would be more constructive to the community when they exited those facilities.
Yeah, and
rather than worse.
That's right. And
they definitely learn how to get worse in there.
Yeah, that's right. And it's getting in patterns of behaviour. And when you've got someone that's been institutionalised, and that's a definite true term, and I've seen it, witness it and do now. And it's not easy when you're just trying to, because you can't just expect, and it drives me nuts because people get transition, the system spits them out and they've got to find accommodation in 28 days, permanent housing, and don't fall off me noggin. And, you know, they might have temporary accommodation for 28 days and they've never stepped in front of a housing office. They don't have family. They might not have all these resources or come from a loving home.
Yeah.
And so, you know, and then you've got the system that doesn't really understand if you've got some people that don't have a disability and they can sort that stuff out, and some people do, and then people don't recognise that, and they're supposed to find all this stuff, and then they're sleeping rough because they've been kicked out of their TA, which is their temporary accommodation, and then they're like, oh, well, I'm hungry. I don't know. I've never gone into Centrelink. I don't know how to hook myself up with the DSP or whatever, because it doesn't always happen inside, or how to access money or whatever it may be. And they walk into Coles and, you know, they get caught for obviously grabbing food, and bang, you know, they get done, and parole officer slaps on the breech and bang, back inside. It keeps turning. And if you've got these private entities that can, you know, that's the one thing I do get scared about. If there is privatisation around this where individuals or companies can benefit, and I hope it doesn't sort of get to that. We're lucky in Australia we've got the majority of stuff's public, right? We're not like the States and stuff like this, but yeah, it's a tricky space, mate, that's for sure.
Yeah, it is, but there are some obvious answers to it. It's a little bit like the food thing that we talked about, you know, the culling situation. There are some answers there that, like the initial part of it wouldn't be easy, would it? To come up with the right answer and how to actually help those people be more functional in general community. Like when they're not functioning, they're in the right place, right? But you don't want to have to keep doing what you're saying there. So there's got to be some sort of education that goes on regardless of how old you are.
Yeah, that's right. And is there a lot that you've learnt, like, when it's got to do with your footy career? Because I know we haven't touched a bit on that, mate, and that's probably another, you know, but you're looking at, you've had highs and lows.
Yep.
Whether it's got to do with as a player,
Yep.
and coming from up north, come from Thursday on, bang, he's in Queensland on the mainland. He's bang, you've come down to St George, and you used to miss it, but you didn't play with Tallis, did you?
Yeah, Gordy made his debut alongside me in 1992. He played his first grade game. It was our last game of the season against West. So I played that game because we were going into the semis. So Smithy arrested a whole lot of our regular first graders. I didn't get a rest because I normally came off the bench in those days. But so Gordy played played one game beside him. Pretty impressive dude.
Mate, and just what did you learn off Brian Smith? Because I ran into him once up when he was coaching for Newcastle. And nice, but it was up in Jasmine, just strolling past and saw him. So is there a bit of, because you learn a lot along the way in life, taking education and information from individuals and, to where Minicello's introduced you to the path that you're on, and that is awesome. But there's also a lot of different players that, help get you into the position. No, I wouldn't say get you into the position. It's what the knowledge, your own knowledge broker, and it's what you've taken on. So did Smithy have a big impact on you, and what he...
Absolutely. And Smithy had a big impact on the game. He's just not recognised in the same way because he didn't ever win a grand final, right?
No.
He made plenty but never won one. And look, Brian's approach to rugby league became very analytical when we came out of a period where Warren Ryan probably was the leader of that, but Smithy wasn't far behind in developing new strategic approach to footy, and his understanding of the game and a lot of the stuff that he developed is still being utilised a long time after. So he was a part of the new strategic approach, the high level elite strategic approach to footy. And he also was a really good educator because his background was a school teacher.
Right.
What Brian, and I'm sure that he, and I'm forever grateful for him. He gave me my first opportunity in coaching, and then I ended up going to England with him as well. And, I've worked with him. Brian sometimes was just a little bit too far in front of the curve for players because you sometimes forget, and he was so advanced that sometimes when you get too far in front of the curve, you've got to remember you're talking to young men. And, but when you're an innovator like him, you're always going to do that, and that was probably the one thing that, sometimes got in his own way, but an amazing intellect, and the amount of, when you have a look at the amount of coaches that have gone on from under Brian, there's a lot. There's a lot. So, he's certainly had a huge impact on not just me but a lot of people.
And did you take a lot of, because each different team, right, they got their different cultural sets, right, when you're going through, and it's vast different cultures. Like, when you've gone, you've gone to Canberra, you've gone to Panthers, and that's, you're taking on a lot there. And when you got languages, when did you go there? 06?
Yeah, just after Johnny Lang. So,
because they got the premiership not a little bit before you come
2003.
Yeah.
That was an interesting one. Penrith, I'm so proud of what they've been able to do, but when I was there, they were in debt. The whole club was in debt. And because of the pokey machine legislation had changed, I didn't do my due diligence. Probably a little bit up myself those days, and, thought that, just go there and fix everything up that they had to do. And they had a lot of players that came out of that grand final team that were still there.
And there was was it a transition? Like, is it new old coach out, new coach in, or does Lang come on, because he'd been there for a bit and sort of passed the reins over and, you're just got to learn the culture.
Yeah, but you've also got to develop it or progress the culture in the way that you believe is best.
100%, yeah.
There was just some other, but what I did realise pretty soon after I got there was that we needed to change a lot of the personnel, not because they were bad people or not because they were bad players, but it was time to to regrow the organisation, and we probably needed more resources, and that's like I had a small crossover period with Gus. I'd already decided to leave before Gus came, and although that my contract was finishing up, but then we had a small crossover. But what he did and the resources that he brought into the organisation through, government funding and building their high performance centre and obviously changing the way that the club, I wish he was there when I was there.
Okay.
Because to do things effectively, we needed resourcing, and he understood how not just to resource the team, but the whole club and the region. And look at what's happened now.
It's insane.
They recruit most of their players from their juniors.
100%.
And
it's like they've got an endless pool.
Yeah, but to get that endless pool, you've got to put resources into that endless pool, because if you don't, you can have the best resources ever as far as playing talent, but they teach their 16-year-olds to be NRL players, not win under 16s.
Yeah, right.
And that's
having that mindset from the get-go.
Yeah, you're not here to, we want you to be at your best now, but this is the language we use up there. This is what Ivan has the team doing, and this is your progression. You want to get outside that? That's fine. You're not a Panther, and that's my long distance analysis of it and admiration for what they've done.
Yeah, right. Was Stephen Boss on the board when you were there, if you can remember? I only asked.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Oh, right. No, because when I was working because I used to work for Multiplex down in the city, because he was one of the directors.
When was that?
Oh, well, this is, because we went, I shouldn't say, I still talk like I'm working for him. Bloody, so with Multiplex when I was with him, because we built that, or Multiplex built that performance centre.
That was after me.
But this is before, he was already on there before, so I was just wondering, because he had a very, very short stint with the Panthers, and the story goes that the Falcon put a pretty decent hit on him, and he decided to jump into engineering, mate, and that's all she wrote. So
okay, makes sense. Makes sense.
Yeah, mate. But I just wanted to put out, so just when you're looking at the culture that you've learnt from, and it intrigues me, like, because I look at different sports, like I'm big on the NBA. I love basketball, like, and the NBL, and just seeing a lot of, if you're looking at, say, Greg Popovich, like, and he's, like, got the most wins, like this in the NBA in total. But just looking at the ethos and the culture that he puts in place, or if you're looking at the Phil Jacksons, like that coached Kobe Bryant, that coached Michael Jordan, but a lot of these, and it's like if you look at The Last Dance and you look at what Jackson brought in to where it was things from like the Native Americans and some of the ethos and some of the cultural advantages or just mindsets that these individuals would have, and he'd bring that to the players. And it would really interest me, like having different cultural sets, no matter what it was, whether it's from east, from west, and bringing that to a team so people can collectively buy in to where you're going to get to a mindset where it can help you be structured. And it doesn't matter if you're stepping foot on the basketball court or how you carry yourself as a person in the community. So did you learn a lot of that from different, because it intrigues me, because I know you went to NZ as well, so to the Warriors, and that's a whole, different, dealing with the Maori people out there, and like, so did you take on different cultural sets, because you're leading into what you're doing today, so did you take a lot of those different steps to what you're doing today?
I'll give you an overview of the whole thing, is that I was probably a better coach when I was younger than I was when I started to get to the back end of my coaching career. And I was only still in my 40s, by the way. And it wasn't because I cared less. It wasn't because I worked less hard. Is that some of my education in coaching was I thought I needed to be smarter than the opposition, and I thought I also needed to build organisations. So, I'd look at the whole club and go, well, we need to be better as a club. When I look at the best coaches, okay, in rugby league, let's use rugby league, but all those other coaches you mentioned, for example, in the NBA, which I've read all their books as well.
Love it.
You know what they're best at? Is building relationships. So Wayne Bennett, He knows when your birthday is. He knows how many kids you got. He knows their names. He knows your wedding anniversary. He knows how your mum's health's going.
Yeah, right.
You know, Craig Bellamy, again, they build high-level relationships.
And he was under Bennett, yeah?
Yeah, but again, well, Ivan has his own way. You got to do it in your own way. You can't do it in Wayne's way.
No.
And when I was a young coach...
But it's taking little bits and forging it into your own, yeah?
And I never recognised it. I had a fair bit of success as a young coach in England, and when I first came to Canberra, we were expected to get the wooden spoon every year. We made the semis. But I prioritised relationships, and I prioritised coaching those young people. As soon as you take your attention off that, you dilute that relationship. When you're trying to be smarter than the opposition, you're dealing with stuff you can't control. What you can control is how it's not about being friends, but it's about you understanding that I care about you being the best you can be. And that's why you're here. If you're not being the best you can be, me telling you you're not being the best you can be is because I care for you, not because you're not smart enough and our strategic approach in this game needs to be this. And all that stuff has a place, but I found that in the wrong way by being distracted by things, it's meaningless unless you have high-level, relationships, because it's a high-performance sport. And you're asking people to do the unnatural. Because if it was natural, no one would watch it on TV, right?
Nah.
So
you want to see the predictability,
Yeah, so you've got to have, and you can see that, right? They're not best mates, but you can see the bond around those teams. And I just, I didn't do it for a bad reason. Didn't do it because I cared less for the players, and I did it because I put my attention in the wrong place. And when you do that for too long, there's a consequence to it. And that's the consequence I had to pay. I would have liked to have learnt, instead of learning the hard way, I would have liked to have learnt the constructive way, and I haven't quite got that, but I just kept putting more energy into the wrong place.
Yeah. But that's the thing, mate. Like, you're saying that, putting the energy in the wrong place, but whether you learn the hard way, whether it's negative or positive, this is me personally sort of bringing this on. It's taking that on board, knowing how to forge it into a positive way, whatever the experience is. So, and then that's what was intriguing me into, like, where we've talked about the majority of the conversation, but what you've done with your footy career, like as a player, as a coach, all those steps are out the way, and you come along this person, Mr. Minicella, and then that's another step. But then you go on, and then the next step, you're talking to the people that are working in the prisons, and it's looking at the correlation between, how you're teaching these young blokes that are running on the field and you're thinking of strategic plays and how to be strategic and analytic overall of how to win, or how to be offensive or how to be defensive within those moments, and how to be reactive in the right way. But that's what's intriguing me, like, how to bridge that over to what you're doing now. But so talk us through
Sporting
that.
analogies are powerful because they're easy to understand, right? So you can take a lot of the complexity out of it, and you can make really high-level information accessible. That's my gift, is not to come up with the cutting-edge stuff. My gift is, and I've got contacts with some of the leading minds in the world. I'm good mates with Deepak Chopra, right? And he's miles in front of people. He's, again, the stuff that he wrote in the late 80s is now cutting edge stuff around longevity. He wrote a book about that in the 80s.
Doesn't that drive you nuts?
Oh, well, it's just, again, but so I obviously don't have the same level of access to the unknown, because that's what, like, whoever came up with the idea of a phone.
That's true. Yeah.
A mobile phone, that was an idea, okay? So that's from the unknown. My strength isn't coming up with stuff that no one's ever heard before. It's about how does this high-performance stuff, because high performance is a bit of a bullshit word. It's human performance. If it works for an athlete, it's going to work for you. So how do I get access to people to improve their health and well-being? How do I give access to leaders to make sure that their environments are more functional? And so I can use those sporting analogies. And the good thing about, say, leadership, I've done it really, really well, and I've done it really, really badly. So I've got the contrast. And while being able to be, humble enough to go, or vulnerable enough to go, you know what? And the reason I got the sack was a good reason, not because I didn't care, not because I wasn't smart enough. I just had my attention in the wrong place, and it wasn't being helpful. Now the organisation mightn't have seen that, but if you don't put, you got to put your attention in the right place. And so that's what I've been able to do with all the high performance stuff, from the physical, all the diet, exercise, all that sort of stuff, to the mental, how you got to think and how you can actually control. You got to control your thoughts, or they control you, and how you feel. The biggest cause of death and disease on the planet is how you feel. Perceived threat. Perceived threat, remembered threat is called depression. Imagined threat's called anxiety. And it's not real, but the impacts of it are real. So please, anyone listening, I'm being respectful to both those conditions, but they're not. The threat isn't right there, about to eat them. But your brain can't tell what's real, remembered, or imagined. It's not its job. Your brain's job is to keep you alive, and so it gets created in that. So how, like an athlete who is sad about something, or an athlete who's anxious about something, not going to perform at their best. So how do you get them into a mindset of clarity? How do you reframe that? How do you get them to answer the right questions to themselves to be able to be at their very, very best? And at high performance, if it wasn't high performance, if there wasn't pressure on, it wouldn't be something anyone's interested in, because it wouldn't be high performance then. So every athlete's going to experience, pressure, and every athlete's going to have a negative experience to it every game. So how do you move from a negative response to that pressure to a positive response? Well, we know that there's a science behind how you can do it. We've talked a little bit about some of it, because you can't go and have a committee meeting about it, or you can't sit down and have counselling about it. You've got to do things now to change your mindset. So you've got to cut it off early, but then you've got to use things like breathing. You've got to use things like tactile stuff to reframe your thinking, to cue into, all the visualization that you've done to what you can do. So how do you make that useful for someone who's experiencing challenge in the workplace? How do you make that useful for someone who's got individual, challenges around how they think and feel? How do you make that better for a team environment in the workplace? How do you get a leader to engage all those people better? And by using those sporting analogies that we were able to do, merged with leading edge science, that's what we do.
Mate, and that's great. So where is it going? So you're looking at some of the work that you're talking about doing. So you've gone into justice.
Yep.
And
we've done work in health.
Yeah. So where are we going with this? So I want people in the broader community to know what's going on with.
So we do stuff with energy providers, mines, all large corporate organisations. We've done stuff with, funeral providers.
Yeah, right.
You don't really realise until you realise what that's a really challenging environment for people, and they're like big employers. So we're not confined to anywhere. Mm-hmm. If they've got people and you want those people to get better, because people's well-being is important, particularly if you want to have a high-performing organisation. So again, we don't focus on their injury. It's like the people that we had today. We don't focus on what's wrong with them. We don't get 30 people in the room and say, okay, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? No, we focus on the things that they can do to make their life better. And we give them break-in. We say, don't take all this information. Just take the 2, maybe 3 things max that resonate with you most. Take that away, get some momentum in your life around them and come back to us. We had one lady today who came back to our program. She'd lost 90 kilograms. I'm going to say that slowly. She had lost 90 kilograms. She came up to me and I was...
That's not mucking around.
She said, "Oh, how you going, Matt?" Well, that's our new record. We had, before it was 55. And she was in a wheelchair when she first came. So she came up and started talking to me yesterday morning. And she said, "You don't know who I am, do you?" I said, "Oh, look, I'm sorry. We've had a lot of people through the program. And look at my hair colour, ex-footy player, probably my memory's not the greatest." And then she said her name and I went, "Oh, my God." I did not even because she was walking. And I just did not even recognise you. I'm so sorry. So, I've had some great experiences in my life, but we get that sort of stuff, not just weight loss, people that haven't seen their family for, years. I get a phone call from a truck driver bawling his eyes out on the phone. I just want to say thanks. I'm down at the coast and I haven't seen my family for this long, and I feel you guys made me comfortable to do that. Just by all high performance stuff that makes people understand themselves better. Self-awareness or lack of self-awareness is probably the biggest cause of what people call mental health, in my opinion, in what I've been exposed to. But just try and develop some self-awareness and just simple tools that people can use on a daily basis.
100%. Knocked it on the head there, mate. And before we wrap it up there, I just want to tell you this story, just the power of food going into it, mate. So a good mate of mine, and Mr. Mark Shred over here in the corner knows Mr. Shannon. So a mate of mine, so he has MS.
Yep.
And I watched all this in real time. So like he started, with certain lesions on the brain, and he was losing function of his foot and starting to get foot drop, and things were getting a bit worse. And he just happened because, with MS, that's degenerative and that can get worse over time, and it's not great, because it can, attack not just the body but get to you cognitively, and you can go downhill pretty quick. And there's different variations of it. But so he come across this doctor, and which put him on an OMS diet, which is pretty much a pescatarian diet. So just fish, veggies, all that gear. Strictly took that on board, and it was insane. Like over time, so he lost his license because of the foot drop and all this. So then over time, because he's seeing the real scans, working with all these top clinicians, where some of the lesions are starting to go, the foot's come back, he's got his license back, and things are forging ahead. And I was blown away because I've, witnessed that. Like I've, big believer in what goes in and all that. But just to see it within MS on that level, because I didn't know at the time of OMS, and he's talking me through it, and, we got him over for dinner, and he's, we're fixing him up with fish and all this sort of gear, and it was so interesting, but I was so stoked for him to see it in real time. So, mate, it's there.
Yeah, and again, it's about giving people access to it. And that's what I think we do a really good job of, and I'm so lucky. The mentors that I've got in my business are like genuinely incredible, because they've got lived experience. That's
huge, lived experience, mate.
Yeah, as well as, we merge lived experience along with science, along with making it accessible. There's no use if you sit there and you've got the greatest information and people are just sitting there with a blank face going, what are they talking about? So you've got to make it understandable, and I'm so grateful for the people that I get to work with and how they do that in a really amazing way.
Awesome, mate. Well, is there anything else that you want to put out in the atmosphere, or any shout-outs? Because we've covered a lot of ground, and, mate, very grateful that you're having a yarn with me. But is there anything else that you want to put out there in regards to what you're doing today, what's coming in the future? You've already touched on a lot of it, but Mate, you got a bit of wisdom in there, so I want to tap in.
Yeah, well, if anyone wants to get in contact with us, first of all, it's just the Changeroom at .info. So, and again, we're an Australian company and we're based here. And we've got some exciting things coming up in the future. So, again, I probably can't get it. I've got my second book coming out. So my first book's called The Changeroom. But it's not as... It's a really simple book about how you can elevate your well-being. So it went bestseller a couple of years ago. I've got a second book just about to come out that I'm co-writing with one of the mentors, one of our female mentors, because I wrote it it was a bit blokey to start off with, but it's about winning the second half of life and things that you can do to, again, rather than go through the struggle of being past 40, how to enjoy it. So we've got, again, a lot of science with a lot of experience in that as well. So, yeah, and next year got a couple of really exciting things coming up. But, again, get in contact with us. If you're interested in any of the stuff, we like, if you have a look at our mentors, we can get them out and they can do individual chats, including myself, or we can run programs through large organisations, which we've done as well. So, and as I said to you before, I don't think our stuff works. I know it does, because we've seen it and we've seen the results of it across all organisations. So it's something I feel completely confident about because of the quality people that we've got working and the intent behind them. I don't care how smart they are. If they don't care, they don't work for us.
100%.
Yeah.
Matt, appreciate the work, mate. And I just hope, what you said today, and it does sing true a lot of it to myself, and I think it will do to a lot of the community. If you're, if you're upright up there or wheeling on 2 or 4 wheels or whatever the situation is. So really appreciate you coming on board and having the yarn, and look forward to seeing what you got in the future and your new book, mate. So appreciate it.
Yeah, mate. Thanks, Jake, for having us, and we'll get you along to a program real soon.
100%. I'll be there. Beauty.
Thanks, mate.
Beauty. Hey, had a lot to yarn about there, hey? Solid. Just philosophy, life, how you can be effective, getting a measurable balance for yourself and others. Really enjoyed it, and wish nothing but the best for the Changeroom and the work that Matt's going to put into it and into the community. A lot of people will benefit, that's for sure. And if you like the podcast, hit that subscribe or follow button, and we've also got a Patreon page. The link is within the description. So if you want to roll with the squad and become a patron, that'd be great. And if you want to get in contact with me, you can get me via Instagram at streetrollandcheetah, or email, one word, streetrollandcheetah@gmail.com, or on Facebook, Keep Rolling with Jake Briggs. I'm on LinkedIn, Jake Briggs, so check it out. I want to thank our sponsors, Permaville Australia, the greatest electric wheelchairs in the land. Wouldn't be sitting in anything else but these 4 wheels right here, and they've got great assistive tech also. So righto, see you on the next one.